All righty. Sit back on your hips, cross your shins, one in front of the other. Flex the foot. Place the hands on thighs, lift up. Press down on your thighs when you lift, so you're not just lifting by pushing your back and spine forward. You're really pushing down with the hands to get some activity from the lower muscles and the under muscles of the ribs and the armpit to lift. Exhale, drop your shoulders. Take another breath in, push your hands down, lift the spine up. As you exhale, draw your back ribs towards each other, your side rib forward, your front rib up. Let your eyes close, your chin tilted up and lifted, head moved back slightly, lined up so you're out of that fallen neck forward. And breathe. Kind of give yourself a few moments here. So sitting in silence can be a challenge. Those of you that have been in my classes before, that 10 or 15 seconds there, I didn't say anything. What comes up for you in just quiet? Are you holding your breath, fighting with your body? And now that my voice is in the picture of or audibly heard, you can start to see how it might distract you from what you were going through. Teachers have a lot to share. Students have to decide ultimately if what's being shared is taking them closer to themselves or farther away. I think we've all had instances in your life, or at least I can say I know I have, where someone's advice moved me away from that thing that I wanted. And I had my doubts, but I listened to them because they were a teacher, they were someone in authority. So when you come into the yoga practice, make sure that when you go through the practice, you're not just taking every single thing as truth, even my words, because even though I might offer lots of interesting adjustments or insights, I'm not living in your body. No one else is. If something comes along for you that doesn't serve you, you don't need it. If you come across something that you know antithetical to the health of your body, an adjustment that you know that it's painful, a pose that you know has caused you some issue or injury in the past, forcing yourself to do it, to me, is saying, I don't know better than my body. My experiences are not as important as someone else's advice or opinion. So when you get on the mat, my friends, even though you may have your teacher with you, whether here on Zoom or in person, the great teacher is the internal one that gives you immediate feedback to what's going on in your body. The one that's there the next day, sharing with you if something is sore, you feel better, you feel worse. Always check in to make sure you're not dismissing yourself or that inner teacher just because someone who isn't you gave you that advice. There's somewhere that it's a balance of both. It becomes one finding the outside teacher that's the right one. And helping your inner teacher really learn to listen to your inner teacher. So let your practice be about both, my friends. Taking in the most of both that you can, the best of both as much as you can, the external and the internal. Because as Mr. Angar used to say, we are beings that walk with our feet firmly planted on the earth, but our heads in the clouds. So let's be in between. And just for another few moments, sit in that silence. Seeing if there's anything internally that is offered. Bring the palms together with your chest. Let your thumbs touch the sternum. Pinky moves away from ring finger, index from middle. Roll them shortly 3 times and begin. Take a breath. Om. Shoulders away from your neck. Flex your feet. Om. Back ribs in, side rib forward, front rib up. Om. Bow your head for a moment. Sleep the essence of yoga inside yourself. Bring your hands into your lap. Let your head rise and your eyes open. So nice to see everybody. We're going to start seated. So still set it on a bolster, blankets, couch cushions, anything like that. Stretch both legs straight out in front of you in Dandasana, please. Dandasana, head of bent staff, very basic seated pose. I know for some of us, we've been sitting a lot today, but there's a lot to be learned just from being seated. We have to practice doing it in a way that is good for our body rather than, not just not. So take your fingertips onto the bolster or a block behind you if you would like, and just lift your spine up nice and tall. Thighs together, feet together, toes pulled back towards the face, creating what's called dorsal flexion of the foot. It's where the front 5 joints of the foot are above the heel and the toes are pulled back as deep as you can. And try to pull the big toe and pinky toe back equally. So you engage both sides of the leg. When you pull the toes back, feel the muscles of the leg that really engage to do so. It can be pretty easy just to overflex the ankle and push the calf down. But when you pull the toes back, try to flex the top thigh muscles so you feel the inner and outer sides of the calf and the top of the thigh flex. So you're really not just trying to push the back of the leg down by flexing the foot, but when you pull these toes back, and you activate inner, outer, and top of the leg, and pulling the bone back towards the hips. Down, or the straightness of the leg, or the straightness of the Achilles tendon, which you might have heard in my classes or in some other teachers' classes, where they say, try to press your Achilles tendon down, try to flatten the leg to the floor. That happens. That will just happen by flexing the leg naturally in this position. Don't worry about pressing it down, but worry about pulling those toes back and lengthening the leg and the femur bone pulling towards the hip. So you almost get like this little bit of flexion inside the hip itself and a lift of the chest more. Don't worry about pressing it down. It'll happen. So toes back, thighs flexed. And so pressing your fingertips down, whether on the floor, bolster, or some prop next to you, lift your spine up nice and tall, and then kind of test, Lean forward just a little bit and feel the pressure inside your hip. Are you kind of moving your spine out and your shoulders past the hip line? And move it back a little bit. And you're trying to find that middle point where you can feel your legs stay flexed. Because if you go too far forward, it grips the outer hip. If you go too far back, it grips your inner groin. You're trying to find that middle point where both sides are active and you can just lift up tall. Try to keep that. Stretch both arms straight up. Palms facing in. It's hard. Then look at your knees, look at your feet. Did one set of toes unflex? Did one thigh unflex? Are you back to pushing down on the knee? Can you just pull the femur bone back so there's that lift, like the leg is pulling under you to pick your hip up? Nice to see everybody. Very cool. You're all here working hard. Interlace your fingers, turn both palms up to the ceiling. And instead of pushing your arms back, which will make you sway your spine out, which will overactivate your hips, move your arms forward just a hair and work more on working the legs to lift up taller. And you pull your femur bone back in towards your hip so that you can push your hands higher, not necessarily back. Don't worry about this action where the hand's going back behind the head. Didn't ask for that. I just said lift up. Up would be more where the hand, shoulder, and ribs are more in a line than this. We're all swayed out. Go for the action that is against gravity. Mr. Angart liked to use a lot of language about rejuvenating the spine to go against the pressure of gravity with backward bends, inversions. But even if you're not in either of those cases, you still create that same active lift, even in poses where the compression of gravity on the spine is the same as your natural everyday. Bring the arms down. Take one block. You're going to place a block, and if you don't have a block at home, you can use a book, a rolled up towel, anything just to kind of create a marker on the outside of your calf. Just like that. Just one, just the right calf right now. Oh yeah. All right. So if you got some, I mean, it can be a balled up shirt. It really doesn't matter what it is. You want something with a little bit of height, 3-4 inches roughly, just so you can feel it. So Tristan's going to place her fingertips next to her hips. I encourage you all to play along. Flex your thighs, pull the toes back, right? Don't push the calf down, because what's going to happen isn't going to be helped by that. Pull the femur bone back towards the hip so that leg is actively flexing back in towards the backside of your pelvis. And then you're going to try and pick your right foot up and move it to the outside of the block. Now, how many of you bent your elbows and slouched and came down like this to do so? Most of us. I do it all the time. So before you put the leg back, relift your spine, friend the front to back, flex the thigh, try not to lean left or right, pick the right leg up, move it back to its original spot. It's hard. It's real hard. Okay, we'll do it again, but this time, keep the spine lifted, use the hands to start. When you pick your foot up, just pick it up and notice how the knee wants to rotate externally. Try to keep the knee pointing straight up as you lift it, move it out, and put it down. Exhale, go. Try to keep your right hip on the ground. Put your foot back. Don't turn your knee out. It's very hard not to bend the knee and to rotate, not to rotate it out. That's a lot of inner groin stuff and work. So go a couple more times at your own pace. Just go with it and experiment at your own pace, moving the leg up and over the block and back, keeping the arms and chest lifted, and just kind of go back and forth. I'll tell you when to stop. And don't make it fast. This isn't about getting your reps in. This isn't like, you know, the jazzercise class, or CrossFit. I want you to methodically try and keep the muscles of each leg engaged. I want you to try and make each thigh stay rotated internally because they want to turn out. And can you keep your spine lifted when this happens? So when we start working on poses like Navasana boat pose, you have the core, leg, and back strength that's all used to working together to maintain the lift. Keep going. I'm not tired of watching yet. Those of you with the camera off, so you've got the best option. I'm not going to be able to see you. A few more times. You got it. Now check in with your left leg as you move the right leg. Now that you're getting the right leg to feel stable. Is your left thigh disengaging? Are your elbows really bending to lift your legs? Keep your arms straight. Use them to help prop the chest up. Teach your spine to lift to use your legs. When you think in forward folds, like the first time you learn forward folds, it's to extend your spine long and fold down to get out of the crunch. All right. Bring your leg back to center, move your block to the other side. Fingertips on the floor next to you, lift up, flex your right thigh, pull the toes back, same on the left foot, leg up and over. Check in to see how hard or easy this is. And then move it back. And then start going back and forth a few times. Got about a minute, a little less. Good, Shuba, good lift. It's okay, there you go. There you go, Lena, you got it. Don't bend your knee, Chaya. Try not to lean back, keep your spines lifted. More importantly is to keep the spine straight, even if, and I'll say this is true, if you find it challenging to lift the leg, if you have to lean back a little bit to find the strength, it's okay to just don't crunch. Keep the spine long and then create that movement. Form is more important in the long run. Got 4 minutes left. All right, place your leg back in center. Not so bad. Great job. Move the block to the right or move your prop to the right. Lift your spine. Both arms up in the air. Now is the time to be angry at me. There is going to be a time. Move the right leg to the outside of the block. Do the best you can. Woo! Now that you got out there, really stretch for that sky and now move it back. And then go back and forth. Just a few times. What's the challenge and what's the differences between with your arms down and your arms up? Yeah, your arms get tired faster, sure. Does your knee roll out more? Is it easier, harder? Does your leg that's still on the ground that's not moving fall out all the time? So one of the interesting things that doing this does is it kind of teaches some of the form of the hip openers and seated poses do. It teaches the legs to be able to flex and extend on their own without having to kind of twist or lean your spine into it. Really great for seated forward folds and stuff like that. That's important. All right, arms down. Switch your prop to the left foot. Prop your spine up. Get your arms in it. Get that lift. Start long. And then take both arms up. Then go for your left leg. Move it. Just start playing and moving. All right, yesterday I talked about how Mr. Angar, I think a lot of the work with holding the poses for a long time wasn't just the physical stuff. It was kind of getting into the stuff that's also happening inside, like observing beautiful art. but there has to be some movement. We can't be perfectly still. There's a vibrancy in life and energy that comes with movement. Dance is a big part of life in society. Every culture's got some form of action, movement, partying. And I know this is not partying really for some of us. I'm not going to say for all of us. I'm having a blast watching you. Take a breath, lift your spine up, take a nice, work your right leg just as much as you're working your left leg, pulling the toes back. A couple more times. All right. Bring both legs back to center, bring your arms down. Good job. Keep your left leg straight, bend your right knee, pulling the knee towards your chest. You're going to, with your right knee bent, reach down with your left hand and grab your right heel and pull the shin bone up towards the chest bone. Something we've done a lot. Left hand. All right, sorry about that. Your left hand grabbing the heel, pick up and pull the shin towards the chest bone as best you can. If you're someone that can wrap your forearms around the shin and hold it, great. Doesn't matter. Even if you're just down here and the legs almost resting on your thigh, you're still using some of the upper body strength. There's an activeness to the arms bending to pull that up, and then you pick your chest up against that, because the action is, when we pull up on the shins, to round forward and around, right? If the hip's tight, this resistance matters. So try to, when you pick up on that weight of the shin, bend at the elbows, pulling the elbows back, not just wrapping your arms around it and hugging it, but even when you're here, pull the elbows back behind you in this action to lift your chest up better. You're gonna get deeper into your hip. Try to lift your shin up just a hair higher, Miss Pratima. Looks good. There you go. Lovely. And then you just hold, and then see which side of your body's leaning one way more than the other. Sure, your balance in your hip is not going to be perfect because this is an asymmetrical pose, but where are your shoulders? Is your right arm up here and your left arm down here? Can you level out your shoulders and pull both elbows back again? You've been in my class before where we've done the touch the tip of the middle finger while the line of the collarbone, pulling the elbows back to activate the back. It's a similar thing. We pull the elbows back to activate the upper back muscle, so we're not using the upper back around, putting all the pressure on the lower. Come on. Take a few breaths. I think this pose is, for me personally, one that I don't do as often as I think about it. But when I think about it, I have a lot of feelings about it. Lots of challenge of the arm, lots of challenge of the leg, lots of challenge of the hip. But inside that challenge is a lot of stuff that I know I can learn from. So instead of making it about how hard you pull the shin in, even if the knee has to come down or the shin has to come down a little bit, can you make it more about the elbows coming back so that it's more about your upper back? So that you have back muscle flexing, pushing up against gravity, rather than folding into a hip thing. Sure, eventually, this is the stuff that preps the foot going behind your head and all of that, but that's not what we're working on right now. Working on now is just the lift extension of the spine. So wherever you are, whether your foot's on your thigh or anything like that, still hold on with your hands, one hand on the foot, one hand on the knee, and pull the elbows back. Even just a little bit with my ankle and my thigh, if I hold those 2 points and pull the elbows back, I lift my chest up taller and higher. I decompress the spine some and even into the right hip. The foot's up here and I do it, I still have to do the same action. But foot up near my head, I still work that spine up. It's easy to slouch. We do that plenty. Or at least I know I do. I don't want to judge anyone else's day that I don't know about. All right, stretch the leg out. Bend your left knee. Right hand grabs left foot. Pull the shin up just a little. One hand holds the knee, one hand holds the foot. Elbows back. Create some change, lifted action in the upper spine. And one side hip may be different than the other. That's okay. We're not focusing just on perfect balance of the hip or legs, but what we're trying to do is use the upper spines moving upward to work the legs, and the leg work to challenge the muscles of the upper spine to stay lifted. Right? Because if you're like me, a human being, you probably, lean one side more than the other. I really, in my office chair, lean onto the right arm a lot. I can feel that right side collapse, and when I lean to the left, it doesn't feel the same. So it's about that awareness and using some of these poses to create a little bit of resistance, a little bit of balance, to try and teach the body, kind of urge it back to that alignment. Even if, like I said, you don't have to have the foot way up in the air. We're not going for intensity of that motion. We're going for activeness of pulling the arms back so the spine can lift. So even if the leg is really low, or even if it's really high, the upper body and the arms are doing the same actions. Elbows are pulling back. And we work. Yeah, a few more moments. All right. Take a breath, stretch both legs out. Bend your right knee and place your right foot to the outside of your left thigh. The foot is on the floor. It's not the ankle laying on the thigh, so it's not John you. But you put the foot onto the outside of the floor and you pull that foot as close as you can get to the hip. For some of us, it's going to be down near the knee, but pull with that hand to put a bend in that knee. And just reach your left arm forward and either grab the left or the right knee with the left hand or the left elbow around the knee. And don't twist. So there will be some twist to the body, but don't just pull yourself hard into it. Just get that hand or elbow around the knee and then pull against the knee and pull the knee towards your left armpit harder. And then lift your spine up. Go for the lift of the spine as much as you can. And notice the difference in your left and right hip. One hip comes higher, probably the right hip. It's normal. All right. Push your right foot down into the floor a little bit. So you activate all those inner thigh and groin muscles, and then let your right hip drop down into the floor. So it's easy to lean to the left to make all this about the outer hip. Push your right foot into the floor, and then kind of roll some of your weight to the right hip again, to the right side of your pelvis. So it stretches the pelvis, the inner groin muscles, and the like. How's that feel? Tight. So even when you're here, pulling on that leg, you're working more on the elbow, pulling back again. Right? You pull that elbow back, that shoulder comes back, can lift the chest, and then push the foot down and lean into that hip so it opens up into the groin, the hip. So the lift of the spine versus the drop of the hip is creating that release to those inner muscles that connect from groin to lower back. It may not be a deep stretch, but it's about letting there be that kind of balance to it. Especially if you're someone that when like you sit on couches, you put one foot down and you sit on your foot, or you cross one leg under you and the other kind of stretched out to the side. Lots of different ways to sit. I'm not saying any of those are wrong, just saying some of those are patterns I've seen or I've done a lot. I remember I used to sit on one of my feet when I would sit into an office chair all the time. Weirdest habits. All right, switch legs. What a great time, since we're all a lot of us are stuck at home still, to take this time to explore what we're doing in our day-to-day life. Right, that makes all these aches and pains or the awarenesses that we can have in our practice. So when you wrap your right arm around, even if it's just the hand or the elbow, push your left foot into the floor, pull that right elbow back. Like you're trying to take your back out of the twist and make your knee come to the armpit more. So we're working different hip and groin muscles here. So again, when you pull that elbow back, and that knee has to do some level of movement. We can't just always make the rounding of our back do it, even though we will have some extension of the back before we're done today. When we pull that back, feel how your body weight wants to shift to one hip for the other. Put some weight into that left hip. Pull that right elbow back so your spine can come up. Just sit with it. We could go into the full twist with this, but in my experience, working into some of the twisting doesn't have the same effect or release on the spine without the pelvis dropping. Because if I lean into the twist and I push my spine into it, and my pelvis isn't engaged to be stable, what ends up happening is we don't get the release to the groin muscle. When we just kind of torque our back into it, one side feels it very intensely, and usually the groin grips up to prevent it. The deeper twists that come in yoga, and I mean deeper just past like your leg going up and over your body, has to come from the pelvis releasing. The groin muscles that connect into your low back are an important part of the body, the spinal column structure to rotate. So what we're doing is we're broadening the back hip, and by pushing the foot down, dropping our weight into that hip, kind of stretch, we're releasing a lot of that inner pelvic groin muscle. This is why it can be very tiring for some of us, especially those of us with back pain like myself. 30 seconds of this, I'm just tired. My groin's tired, my back's tired already. Doesn't mean I fall out of it. I do some level of it. So push your foot into the floor, pull that right elbow back so that arm, the strength of your arm is pulling so you can lift the chest. Let your weight in your hip for a few more seconds. Take your leg out. Oh, okay. Painful. Tight. All right. Okay, there's a lot of different ways we could go with this now. So let's go ahead, bend the right knee again, and place the foot on the outside of the knee, thigh, hip. Doesn't have to be exactly as high. You bring it in as much as you can move comfortably and safely. All right. Now, when you pull that foot in, don't take your elbow around the knee because I don't want you to hug into this. Just use your hand around it. So your right hand to the outer left knee. Take your left hand just behind you so you can push, you can grab a block or something like that. Whichever leg you're on, just the opposite hand grabs that outer knee. And when you start, take your other hand back behind you and lean back. Slouch back a little bit. This is going to sound real weird, but trust me. When you lean back a little bit, that frees up the lower abdominal muscles and the groin muscles to actually begin to twist. So from here, leaning back, pull that right elbow back so you pull that knee deeper towards your body and then twist while leaning back. So it's a reclining action. You twist while in recline and then you sit upright, moving your armpit towards your knee. When we start the twist and we're way upright, if we're tight and we torque. We're just torquing against muscle that's already tight. If you lean back, give yourself some space, the groin is free, and then twist and then pull yourself up into it, there's a change of the muscle that gets moved. It's now in the lower hip, back, and then up your back. It's not as much just kind of locked into the shoulder, locked into the mid-thoracic. There's lots of tightness there, trust me. I know that about myself. So take a moment, take a few breaths. If you've pulled yourself upright, just only with the hand on the outside of the knee. Don't even wrap the arm around it. Don't go into that action. Keep the hand into the outside of the knee. Lean back again. The leg that's straight on the floor, flex it. Pull the toes back. Pull the femur bone into the hip. The bent knee foot that's on the floor, push the foot into the floor hard. Pull the knee close without sitting upright, and now twist, exhaling as you twist. Twist your belly around. Then your ribs will follow. And then sit upright with all of that active and feel which part starts to move. Use your hand behind you to help that sit up action. So you're not just curling, you're using that back arm to pull you upright while in the twist. So you get some movement of all the parts of the spine, the front of the spine and the length of the back of the spine where the bigger muscle is. Leaning back and twisting like that is very similar to like when we lay on the ground, take the leg up and across, or the knee to the chest and twist across into Chitara or things like that. Or Supta Padagonstasana. So kind of in the middle where you can get in that lean back where you can get everything moving, you start the lower spine twist and then you pull your body upright so the twist goes up the whole spine. You're lengthening and screwing the spine up. Switch hands, Karen. So I see, yeah, Shubha switch hands. There you go, Karen. Shubha switch, Pratama switch, Barb switch. No, keep your legs. You had the right legs. Switch your hands. So if your right knee's bent, your left hand grabs the knee. If your left knee's bent, your right hand grabs the knee. So you're twisting towards the legs, Pratama. Yeah. So again, the straight leg flexes, pulls the femur bone into the hip. If your right knee is bent, your hand holds the knee. Right knee is bent, it's the left hand, so you're twisting towards the leg. Lean back onto the other arm, pull the knee into the bend deeply, twist your belly first, and then sit upright using that back arm to lift you. There you go, better, Shubha. Should feel a little different, right? Yeah, there you go, friend, good. Don't wrap the arm around the leg, Chaya, just use the hand. So you can, so it's, there you go, and move that leg into it. Better. Nice, Micah, good lift of the spine. Better, all right. Switch your legs, good enough. Gets into some stuff, didn't it? Put the opposite leg on the outside of the foot. If it's your left knee that is bent, it's the right hand that wraps around, or vice versa. Okay. Just hand on the knee. Don't get into this wrapped up action. This is very popular because it lets you use, it allows for a lot of power, but if you're tight, you can't overpower that tightness a lot of times. We're all more stubborn than we like to admit. Our bodies are. So the hand grabs the outside of the knee. The other hand behind you, lean back. Pull the leg in tight. Pull that elbow back. And then twist while leaning back. And then sit upright while twisted. And you just hold and breathe into it. I kind of broke this down and came into this form of the twist because I was actually having trouble breathing in the twist. The thigh ends up pressing into the diaphragm a lot, and if you're like me and do a lot of pranayama breathing or stuff like that, it feels very compressive. Causes me a lot of anxiety. This is because when I was twisting so much, my ribs were pushing down on the lungs and diaphragm, and that would be antithetical to actually creating the release of a yoga pose. Some of you have heard me say before in classes, you can breathe better, you're doing the pose right. I couldn't breathe better. How's that feel? Yeah. So take a moment, lean back, use the hand, pull the knee into it, take a belly breath, twist the navel, flex the straight leg, pull those toes back. So you pull the femur bone towards the hip. Because when you lean back, it's easy for the straight leg to stretch away from you. Pull that leg in towards you and then sit upright into the rotation. With that straight leg pulling back towards the body so that there's something for the spine to sit up on. Gives me a hip cramp when I do it. It means I'm doing it right. A few more seconds. Let your back adjust. Breathe a little bit. And if you feel it becoming about how much you can roll your body into it, always remember, lean back, move the belly first, and then pick your spine up into it while you work your legs. It's a great spot to experiment with how much your legs affect your spine in twisting. Untwist. All right. Child's pose, please. But I would like for you, as you get ready to go to child's pose, place something out in front of you for your hands to be on, whether it's 2 blocks, a bolster, a stack of books, anything like that. Because I want your hands to be higher than the ground. So watch Tristan for just a moment, please. I know you're all eager to get into this. So Tristan's going to place both hands on the bolster. She's going to take her feet flat to the top of the feet flat, like child's pose is done. Knees wider than the ribs to start. We're going to bring the legs closer together to really work the hips as we go here. She's going to keep her hands where they are on the bolster, and she's going to pull her hips back away from that. Tristan's fairly, but she can't move the bolster. There was the one thing I didn't want to have. So she's going to come back up, keep her hands where they are, keep the prop where it is. There's going to be some micro adjustment. I'm being picky here. But this is about, can you move, can you keep, this is a point where you're not allowing your upper body to round. So when she moves her hips back, she has to really stretch her upper body longer. She's trying to really slide her fingers to the other side of that bolster, her arms to the other side of that bolster, while her legs, this is the interesting part, she actively pushes her knees into the floor to push her hips back. So when she comes up again, pauses, stretches her arms over a little further, just an inch. She just like barely inches it. And now she actively pushes her knees down and pushes her hips back at the same time. Woo! A little more active pose, huh? Mm-hmm. So you want to start in the hands and knees on the floor. Really work your arms and then push your knees down to push your hips back. That's going to create a width to the hips and a stretch of the spine. Go to it. It's a very much more active down child's pose. Ryan, your knees are a little too wide, brother. Bring them in. Just a hair, a little more than that, big guy. You got it. There, your hands need some level of height. Probably no higher than a block, a little more than a blanket, you know. Somewhere between 1 inch and 5. Push down on the knees, push the hips back. So, yeah, I will. Stretch the arms over, push down through the knees and push the hips back. And it's not about how deep down you go with the chest on this. I want you to make this a now pose, not about getting your chest on the floor, but can you activate your legs and push the knees down to so your butt has to go back. It has to broaden and drop on its own muscle. And then the arms are very active, stretching and pushing down into the prop. So you get that upper length. So you're really extending the spine on a very wide pelvis and extending the front of the spine on a wide and open groin. Few more seconds. All right, come on up. Now look at your knees. Don't move your knees yet. Bring your knees an inch closer together. Each knee comes in like just a half inch to an inch, just small incremental in. Hands on the prop. Activate, push down, and stretch over. When you push down, notice if you're pushing the heel of your hand down, or can you stretch the back side of the arm and fingers, like your fingernails are going over. And then push your knees down actively. Try to push the inner and outer knee actively down, and push your hips and let your hips go back. Good. Few more seconds. Breathe. This does put pressure on the knee, but if you want to start stretching the knee, that takes pressure, honestly. There's no perfect protection of it, but those of us with really tight back muscles, this can be very interesting, especially shoulders. I remember this causing my arms to shake a ton when I first started doing it. Exhale, come on up. Now, bring your knees in just a tiny bit closer. So your knees should still have a decent amount of space in between. About now is where I'm going to say that if you start bringing your knees closer together and you feel any compression of the lung or like it's harder to breathe, you don't want to go any closer than that. Anything that cuts off the breath means that you're not getting the lift and length of the spine. It means your rib cage is falling down onto your diaphragm and cutting off your ability to breathe. We want that spread, because that spread means we're lengthening. Hands on the props, knees push down, hips go back, hands press down, reach over the prop. Active legs, even when your hips descend, actively push those knees down. Nice way to open up the hip flexors. Well, an active way to open up your hip flexors. Won't say nice. Nice for me. Few more seconds. Come on up. Move your knees closer together a little bit. If you're at a point where you feel the compression of the lung, the disability breathe, don't move them closer in. Keep at your current level. Push your knees down, arms out. Arms push down and over, hips go back. By the knees pushing down.
Dustin,
And when your hips, yes?
Why do you feel pressure on the neck when you're down?
So what's happening there is that tells me a couple things. One, probably tight in the upper back, that the tendency when you stretch your arms over is to pull your shoulders up. So what I would do is put a pillow under your head so your head lifts a little bit, and this will help your shoulder and neck release. So that when your arms pick up, it doesn't grip up in the shoulder neck area.
Okay.
Thank you, good question. Active legs, push the knees down, flex those quads. So really flex the quad, feel the thigh muscle pulse. And when you feel it pulse, Push the knee down into the floor. Very good. Up we go. Last one, bring your knees just a hair closer. I'm not going to say put your knees together. You should always still have some space. Like you should still be at the point where you have a little bit of space between your knees, at least. You can experiment with the thighs tight together later. Push the knees down, hands up on the prop, arms up or arms stretched out, hips back. Knees active. Flex those quads as you go all the way back and down and stay that way even after you've descended. You okay? Mm-hmm. The closer you bring the knees together, the more it works the inner pelvic muscles. When you work the inner pelvic muscles, the low back will respond. If you feel the inability to breathe as easy, that means you've lost the length of the spine and the ribs are falling on the diaphragm and not breathing correctly. So it's okay to widen the hips and work from there. And widening the hips means opening the knees a little bit. This is important to kind of find that space where you are to really work at, so you don't just jump into the deep end of the pool and like you're just compressing your psoas and you're not actually lengthening your spine. Stretching, your muscles are gripping, they're not actually working. It's like the busy work of yoga poses. The grip. Ooh, yeah, awesome. Exhale, come on up. Okay. Sit back on the top of your feet, or sit back with the top of your feet flat to the floor. If for some reason you can't do this because of your knees, it's okay to put something between your heels and your hips to help. So just sit back for a second. When we sit back, there's an activeness to this posture that I think can really help us learn the lift of the spine. When you're here, push the top of your feet, actively push the top of your feet down into the floor. Actively push both knees down into the floor. Remember, I've said this before, the original meaning of the word asana does not mean posture, it means root of the posture you're in. You want to get to the root of the active root of the posture. You want to get to the thing that should be happening to create change. So this is what led me to always say, when you're having trouble in poses or you're modifying poses, go to the very root of the pose. So the feet here can be active. You can push the top of the feet down. I think one of my teachers said once, push all 10 nails into the floor, and then actively push both knees down, and then feel how you can kind of move your spine back and forth a little bit. It's easy to sit upright. Very easy to the spine to lift when you're actively pushing the shin and knees down. It may be uncomfortable for the foot and knee, but we got to stretch those things out too and work them. You want to reshape the arch of the foot or the muscles of the knee? Big part of doing it. Come on up for a moment, grab a blanket or a bolster, whatever you like, whatever you got. Couch cushions work too. You're going to take the prop right on your heels, just below. So go, if there's the heel, there's the calf, that Achilles tendon space. So it's not tucked up behind the knee joint, and sit on it. Push your shin and knee, or push your foot and knee down as you sit down. Well, yeah, this will be more. Tristan just acknowledged this is more. Thinking I didn't ask for this. So actively work the legs. Feel the thigh muscles, the quad muscle flex and push it down into the floor. And try to push both down. And then feel your foot. Push both the big toe and pinky toe side of your foot down. Your left one. If you have a foot and knee issue or inner groin issue, you're going to have a lot of stuff show up here in your foot. So this is a fairly active pose. I mean, we often treat this as a passive thing, sit back, collect ourselves, stretch our legs. But there's an activeness to it that we can use to really rebalance some things out.
Question,
Yes.
Dustin.
What's up?
When you say press the outer and inner border of the foot down,
So
is it almost like the outer borders of the feet are wrapping around the front of the foot? No.
no, just push your big toe joint down. You
Okay.
can't push the inner border down. That's the arch. That border will never touch.
Okay. All right.
Push the big toe and pinky toe side down to the foot. That'll get you there.
Okay, thank you.
Push the inner and outer border of your knee down. Push all 10 toenails into the floor. My teacher said it, so, you know. A few more seconds. All right, come on out. Lay on your back. You want something for your head, for your neck, for your under your knees, grab it now. An hour flew by in torture, or yoga, I'm sorry. Interesting. Let your eyes close. Tongue away from the roof of the mouth. So at the beginning, I talked about in silence, in the work, you might hear that inner teacher that might contradict the words of the outer teacher. Ultimately, it's for you to decide. The other thing is that when this class is over, the cameras are off, and you're in your free time, whether after this, just after this class or tomorrow or the days after, till we meet again. Can you connect with your inner teacher to guide you back into the things that you may have gotten out of this that were good for you? Just as you logged in here for an hour, so I could maybe guide you into something. When it's not Tuesday or Thursday, can you listen to that inner teacher? Give yourself something during the days when it's not now. So the work, the benefits you gain, the work you do starts to become yours. They're not owned by the teacher that's, leading the class. That you own the practice. So then, regardless of the outcome, you still wake up the next day and you're sore, you feel awesome, whatever. You can say, I did the best I could with everything I've been taught. No one's ever guaranteed any success in this life. But I think listening to that inner teacher and working on your poses is a chance to get that for yourself. So my friends, for the next few minutes in the silence, when my voice is gone, before we end the class, connect to some part of the class that inner teacher in you said, ooh, this is good. This is good for us. This is good for you. And affirm, connect with it so that you will do it between now and the next time we meet. Slowly increase the depths of your breathing. Stretch the arms overhead, lengthening to one side of your body from the other. Take a nice deep breath in. Bend your knees, roll to the right side. Slowly up you come. All right. Namaste. I hope you have a lovely weekend.